Good evening, my friends, and welcome to On the Edge. I'm your host, Dan Davis. So tonight we have a very special program. Normally we like to start our shows with what we call a pregame show that has stuff that's fun, it's funny, it's kind of to get your blood going, to allow our audience to show up early for the live show, to get the chat going, things like that. But tonight we have a subject matter that is probably a little deeper, a little bit more intense than you're accustomed to, and that is the future of money. Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, XRP, Solana, all these different things that we're going to talk about tonight. And so instead of a pregame show that's just dedicated to fun and laughter, instead we're going to have one that's a little bit more educational. And I apologize for the guy with the earrings, but I really did look around the internet, and this is the best explanation I could find of a basic overview of Bitcoin and what it is. So for our show tonight, we are honored to be joined by Dr. Dan Stanislowski, who has joined us in the past on Catholic Family Podcast, as well as Dominic, who's a subject matter expert, and then William and I, who can kind of ask questions. So without further ado, let's get started on the pregame show, on the overview, and I will catch you on the other side.
So unless you're that lady fishing around in her gigantic purse for a checkbook in the grocery lineup, you've probably gotten used to the idea of a paperless, post-cash economy by now. I mean, who wants to carry around a bunch of bills and coins when you can just tap your card and get the same adrenaline rush followed by the same instant regret? So maybe it isn't surprising then that completely digitized forms of currency, namely cryptocurrency, are becoming more popular. We gave a high-level overview in this episode, but today we're going to discuss Bitcoin specifically in a bit more detail because it's the most recognized cryptocurrency at the moment. What is it that makes Bitcoin transactions different from shopping on Amazon with a credit card digitally? Well, you might already know that while normal electronic transactions still involve conventional money, Bitcoin is decentralized, meaning that its distribution and exchange aren't controlled or regulated by a government or other authority. And the technical side of things is also very different. Traditional currency goes through a central payment processor, like your credit card company. But all Bitcoin transactions, whether you're purchasing goods or just sending Bitcoins to a friend because you're a nice guy, are processed by a large distributed network of computers running special software. So whenever a transaction occurs, the network records the sender's and receiver's Bitcoin addresses and the amount transferred and enters this information onto the end of a ledger or record called a blockchain. The blockchain is updated over 100 times per day and is sent to every computer that processes Bitcoin. Because each transaction is encrypted with public key cryptography, which you can learn more about here, and verified by multiple points in the network to ensure that every computer that processes Bitcoin is using identical, correct copies of the blockchain, it is virtually impossible to counterfeit. This verification process is performed by what are called Bitcoin miners, computers or other processing devices that individuals like yourself connect to this large processing network. The mining software that runs works by grouping recent transactions into blocks, which are only accepted by the rest of the network if the block is hashed correctly, which requires the computer to find correct numerical values, a time-consuming and compute-intensive process. But what's in it then for the members of the processing network? I'm glad you asked. So, once a computer does successfully process a block, it's added to the blockchain, and the system generates a new Bitcoin that goes into the miner's digital wallet as a reward. So your computer ends up literally creating money for you out of nothing. So, wow, where do I sign up? You can just mine Bitcoin and never work again? Well, it's a bit more complicated than that. It takes a lot of processing power to generate an appreciable amount of Bitcoin. And since the system is designed for it to take about 10 minutes to successfully process a block, the difficulty of mining generally increases as more nodes join the network. Not to mention that the costs of entry are fairly high. In the early days, you could mine on your spare laptop. Then, for a while, high-end graphics cards were popular choices thanks to their highly parallelized, number-crunching optimized architectures. But these days, though it should be noted that this doesn't necessarily apply to other cryptocurrencies, these days, Bitcoin can only really be profitably mined using specialized mining appliances called ASIC miners. Unlike graphics cards, these can only be used for Bitcoin mining in most cases, and they can cost thousands of dollars each. Oh yeah, and they suck a ton of power too, which, due to high electricity rates in many parts of the world, can kill any chance of profitability for the average person. So it's obvious why people are mining Bitcoin. I mean, there's profit to be made, but why do other people want it? Well, some people are mistrustful of banks and governments to keep their money secure and have a lot more faith in Bitcoin's redundant blockchain system, especially as more and more retailers begin to accept cryptocurrency. Others like the partial anonymity that Bitcoin offers. The only thing that necessarily ties you to a particular Bitcoin address is an encryption key. Plus, you could grab a new address for each transaction you make. In fact, many paid VPN services accept Bitcoin payment for people who are concerned about staying incognito online. Still others look at Bitcoin as an investment, though you should tread carefully here. Because Bitcoin is completely unregulated, there is no guarantee of its value, not even a flimsy one. So investing lots of money in Bitcoin, at least for now, is considered speculative level risk. However, the system is designed so that by the year 2140, no new Bitcoin will be produced, leading some to believe that down the line it'll be a more secure virtual commodity of sorts that will provide a hedge against inflation of traditional currencies. Kind of like how some people invest in gold bars for the same reason. Which sounds cool in theory, but right now, Bitcoin is a bit of a roller coaster. The value of one Bitcoin recently jumped from a few $100s in 2016 to nearly 20,000 around the edge of 2017. And while watching the value of Bitcoin spike suddenly can be thrilling if you've got some in your digital wallet, I would ask that you don't take out a second mortgage on your home just to get in on the latest craze.
All right, so welcome aboard, everybody, to the On the Edge with the traditionalists. I'm Dan Davis, and I'm here tonight with William and our special guest Dan Stanislowski, Dr. Dan Stanislowski, who is Dan. I think we'll go ahead and do a little bit of introductions and let you kind of start. And what's the doctor part of Dr. Dan, and what's your interest in Bitcoin?
Yeah, certainly. So I'm Dr. Dan Stanislowski. First of all, once again, thank you very, very much for having me on your platforms and allowing me to talk about these things. I've been on here a couple times now. I did a podcast on dopamine and also a podcast on pharmaceuticals. So if you scroll through the long history of CFP podcasts, you can find me there. And I explain my background, how I came to be a Catholic there. But so I'll kind of cut to more modern history. I have a PhD in molecular biology and biochemistry, which is why I spoke about dopamine and pharmaceuticals. But I've have long since, it's been basically the COVID era since I've left the intellectual ghettos that are the modern laboratories, and for brighter pastures. And one of the ways I was able to do that was through cryptocurrency. And I have been interested in cryptocurrencies for a number of years. And I've done a lot of deep research to try and grasp the importance and the value of what blockchain and cryptocurrency represent. And that's why I am very privileged to be here and be able to speak on this and hopefully educate our listeners, because this is a very, very important subject, and it'll be a part of all of our lives in the quite near future, I believe.
Very good. And I'm Dan Davis, of course, the host here. And I do have an interest. I don't think it's anywhere near the interest that you do. Unfortunately, Dominic is sick tonight. He's kind of our resident subject matter expert. I know a little thing or two. I'm kind of invested in Bitcoin, also more heavily in XRP right now. And I'm definitely also look at crypto as being the way of the future. I think that's why we wanted to have the show tonight, because I think everybody needs to really start to, especially with Donald Trump in office now, rethink money. And it's a crazy thing to even ponder. But I think that's what we're going to start down the road of helping you understand tonight. So, William, you want to?
Yeah, William Davis here. I know very, very, very little about cryptocurrencies in general. Bitcoin and blockchain in particular. So if I don't expect to do a whole lot of talking, but I might have some just very kind of normie questions to ask for, and for the sake of the people who, like me, just have almost no idea of really what cryptocurrency and Bitcoin is.
Right. And Dan, Dr. Dan, let me start you out with a question. We didn't rehearse this ahead of time or anything, but it should be in your wheelhouse. I'd like to start with a discussion of the question, what is money? And basically, kind of as I understand it, money is anything that two people decide is money, is a means of exchange or of to store value, whatever that is. And it can, typically there are attributes to it. It's tangible, it's rare, it doesn't even need to have intrinsic value. But if you want to maybe start there and talk about what is money.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. Yeah, it is a medium of exchange that both parties agree upon as an acceptable thing to hold in return for some goods. So I think that's what you said is an accurate definition. I really don't have too much to add to that in terms of what is money. I mean, what's interesting about money is the some of the philosophy of money. I mean, there are potentially thousands and thousands of ways of which money can be instantiated in the real world, let's say brought into the real world. And whenever it is brought into the real world, what's so fascinating about it is that all this sin comes in with it, this desire for these things, this lust for money. And so money is a fascinating subject, but the nuts and bolts, bare bones definition of what it is, I think you hit the nail on the head.
And money just looking at a little bit of a historical background on it. Obviously money that God gave us was gold and silver. That's kind of been money for the last 6,000 years that people have agreed upon. Gold is not able to be alloyed with other metals. So it's more of a pure, if it's more of a pure metal, it's rare. It's shiny, of course. And so throughout the course of time, gold has been probably the number one, money. But I think even 400, 500, 600 years, there was not a great need for money, because if you lived in a small town, you could probably get away with just basically a barter system. So I shoe your horse, and you in exchange give me 2 chickens or whatever that might be. And that was how we, how we transacted. But then I think as we started to get urban, more of an urban type of existence, and grow, that kind of straight barter didn't really work, because I might be shoeing your horse and you don't have anything practical that you can give me. So now we start moving on to things like money, and so you got silver, which is more abundant than gold. And silver has really, I think, traditionally been the primary medium of exchange.
Yeah, I think yeah, you're absolutely right. I think gold too. I mean, gold's an interesting um, um, item. I mean, like in the book The Creature from Jekyll Island, G. Edward Griffin talked about how in ancient Rome, 1 ounce of gold could have bought you a very nice toga with nice sandals and the belt and everything you need to look nice. And then translate that to today, and it's holds its value supremely well, and it's about the same value. It buys you a very nice suit, nice belt, shoes, everything, so you get look nice. So gold is yeah, is certainly something that is some people call, like you yourself, God's money, things like that. And as you say, yeah, it's when you have no other practical thing to offer someone in a barter system, then money certainly will take its place and is as a useful tool for that.
Right. Right. So, okay. So I kind of want to bring us a little bit up, just to set the groundwork for Bitcoin and where we're going with things. The system that we're under now, you talked about the beast, the Creature from Jekyll Island, which was a fantastic book. Jekyll Island was extremely important in basically, for those who aren't aware, it was a meeting of bankers. I think, what was it, 1912, 1913,
That's correct.
that yeah, that it
Yep.
happened, that they met together and basically came up with the concept that became the Federal Reserve
Mhm.
Bank. And we like to think Federal Reserve Bank, okay, it's a piece of our government. It's not. The Federal Reserve Bank is not federal. It has no reserves. It's really not even a bank. They are just a group that creates money. And what they
Mhm.
did is they basically talked the government. I mean, Woodrow Wilson gave them the authority to be the only legal tender, the only group that was legally allowed to issue money. And now, for a lot of years, for about 70 years or so, they issued that money 60 years. No, wait a minute, 1973. So that basically 60 years. They issued that money. It was tied to gold. All right. So they had reserves of gold. You could actually take your dollar bill, and in theory, you could cash it in for a fleck of gold. And I think it was 1/35 of an ounce, or something along those lines. And so um, that was how we did business for many years. In 1973, basically, we had too many dollars in circulation, and people started to want to cash in their dollars and take out their gold, and we didn't have enough gold for it. So
Mhm.
Richard Nixon basically did what they called closed the gold window, and saw to it that you could no longer cash in gold. What it did, basically, it set our dollars free from the burden of gold to what's now known as fiat currency. It's basically fiat. You think about fiat voluntatis, right? In Latin, fiat means will. It's the will of those who are issuing the money that gives it its value. It's the fact that we all consider it money, but there is nothing backing it. They just basically create that money from nothing and distribute it, give a lot of it to themselves, a lot of it to their friends, the government, the politicians, whatnot, and then we're left with inflation. We're left with a perpetually decreasing value because they're always printing. I don't know if you want to build on that before we get into Bitcoin, there, Dr. Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, what you're referring to is fractional reserve banking. Like after Nixon, they started fractional reserve banking where they said, okay, for every $100 you put out the door, you loan out whatever a bank wants, that you have to have $10 in reserve, something like that, which is immoral. There's a lot of problems with that. And then now they will it down to zero, right? There is no, you have to have no reserves to be able to issue dollar bills now. And also referring to the Fed, it's something that's called the I think G. Edward Griffin, again in his book, coined the term the Mandrake mechanism, where it is not logical what they're doing. They buy debt and then they issue dollars, which are debt notes. The dollars are essentially IOUs for goods, groceries, houses, cars, and stuff like that. So they train people to store up this worthless dollar bill rather than actual goods, right? And by and large, they're using this mechanism to strip the world of goods and get as many things under their control as they possibly can. And this Mandrake mechanism is the Federal Reserve will say they have some reserves, and that is to say they buy debt sometimes, and no one really knows what debt they're buying and selling. It's a very highly scandalous thing that they intentionally hide from people. But so they pretend to, or actually buy bonds from other countries or whatever they're doing, and then on that they say, oh, because we have this, we can issue dollars, which is just ludicrous. And as you pointed out, it is inflating the value of the price of everything, which is destroying. It actually kills people. It literally kills people. They know that if they increase inflation X amount, this many people are going to fall into despair. This many people are going to start doing drugs. This many people are going to lose their homes, et cetera, et cetera. And they do these things anyway. So it's a highly, highly scandalous system.
Right, and it's kind of what it's all we've ever known. I mean, because it's been around for so
generations.
long, and we think, well, this is just how money works. I pull out a bill and it says Federal Reserve note on it, and then that's where it is. So now, come what was it 1993 when Bitcoin was first created by
well, so I think, well, it's like, so theoretically it's Satoshi Nakamoto created Bitcoin. I think the white paper came out in 2008.
Okay.
And so it's a little bit newer than that theoretically. I mean, I'm of the mind that these things are, planned well in advance. So who knows when it was created? I don't know for sure on that though. But 2008 is theoretically when Bitcoin began. A man or a group of people, no one knows who Satoshi Nakamoto is, created the first Bitcoin. It goes a little bit public history before that. I think David, I can't remember the man's first name, Chaum, Chaum, I believe, was in on creating what are called distributed ledgers. I mean, that type of thing. So this new internet money is less than 20 years old, and is certainly, as we're going to discuss, picking up steam big time.
Right. Yeah, and in the news, I think I just want to give a little that little bit of a historical background, and just to talk real quickly about what's in the news right now. Donald Trump has said that he's going to create a crypto strategic reserve. So just a little bit like I think we have an oil strategic reserve that we can fall back on if times get tough with oil. Donald Trump, being kind of the ultimate businessman, is wanting to put crypto into a reserve so that we'll have it as an asset. But I think I'm getting a little bit ahead of us myself here, and I think Dr. Dan, I think the main thing that you really wanted to talk about here tonight was basically what is Bitcoin and where did it come from and what is it?
Yeah, so I'll start the beginning, because people are highly skeptical of it in general and have been for years, and in a sense rightly so. I mean, right now there are approximately, I don't know the last count, 23,000 cryptocurrencies, something like that, maybe more, I'm not sure. But when the dust settles on this and the regulatory framework descends upon us, I think we'll be looking at 50, 100 tops, and these will be cryptocurrencies that actually do things. And so I want to really zoom out even further when we start looking at this, and to look at the philosophical underpinnings of what's going on here. And it's a philosophy, a power, a force called technique. And so technique is a phenomenon that has really taken hold of the reins of not just crypto. It's all sciences, all engineering, all technologies are now under the yoke of technique. And this comes from, I mean, this man didn't coin the term, but it's a philosopher named Jacques Ellul, and he wrote a book in 1954. He wrote it in French. And he called it in French, Technique, the Predicament of Mankind, because already he was seeing what's happening in sciences, and really what technique is a means or an ensemble of means to achieve some result in as efficient a way as possible. So it's a protocol being implemented to do something efficiently. A machine is any machine is really a typifying technique, because a machine's job is to do one thing and to do it really, really efficiently. Okay. And so now within technique, there's what are called technical forms. And a technical form, for example, is, to get the milk out of a coconut, for example, there's 1,000 ways you can get in there. You can smash it on the ground. You can use a hammer. You can use a knife. You can use X, Y, and Z, right? There's many ways to do that. But the most efficient, and all of those ways, excuse me, are what are called technical forms. Now, when the operator, the person that's smashing these coconuts and trying to figure out the best way to get the milk out of the coconut, when he applies reason to the process and collects data on what is the highest efficient way to do this, that is actually called the technical phenomenon. And when technical phenomenon is applied, you will always tend towards the most efficient way of doing anything. And when you get to a certain level of efficiency, eventually things have to be automated, because humans by nature introduce inefficiencies and are highly inconsistent. So when you reach a certain point where automation becomes powerful enough, human beings must by definition be put out of the system. And now, this is stuff they don't teach you usually in engineering school. They certainly didn't teach it to me in all my scientific education. But when we are constantly doing this, it doesn't matter. The discoveries that you as an individual make do not matter, because someone would have discovered it no matter what, because everyone is applying technique. And now technique, of course, applies to the subject matter we're talking about here today, and that is cryptocurrencies. Okay, so this old inefficient system that we've been with, and really the system we are currently using is still the one that was put in place when Nixon got us off the gold reserve standard. And so while our apps on our phones and everything looks 2025 and flashy and nice, really the technology that's settling payments behind the scenes is very old technology. And so the next iteration of payment technologies is going to be blockchain and cryptocurrencies.
Right. And I think we'll talk. We saw a little bit in the intro. What that blockchain is. It's basically it's a distributed network, right, of computers of whatnot, and it has extremely tight. And in fact, I'm going to put a question up here, and see if it, and I think I might be able to answer this. If I answer it wrong, Dr. Dan, just correct me. So we'll actually have Scott asks, so we'll actually have a ledger of what the government has in its reserves, and I believe we won't, right, because one of the aspects, one of the elements of the blockchain is that you can have a hashtag. You can see that a particular block or that a particular coin is owned, but you can't see who the owner is. Is that correct?
Well, right. They certainly it'll look just like a wallet address, which is a bunch of random characters, right? Many times you can't know. For example, like the address of our digital wallets we're all going to have in the future. Everyone's going to know that we have those. It'll be certainly not anonymous for us. There will be uses where you and I can be hidden from transactions in rather benign transactions, but if something serious happens, the authorities will absolutely be able to figure out very, very quickly who is buying and selling what. And that's another thing that's not understood about blockchain, is that it's not private. It's not for anonymous transactions. It's the opposite. And if you've ever made an account on any cryptocurrency exchange, that's true. They ask you, they grill you on, how much money do you make? How much do you plan on spending on crypto? What is your job? They make you take pictures of yourself. And send it in, and they make you take pictures of your ID and send it in. They make you take pictures of yourself holding your ID and sending it in. So everything about this is antithetical to privacy, actually, and that's no different for a lot of government wallets. For example, we can see that 100,000 Solana or whatever is sent to some account that we know is with the government. That will happen, but there are also going to be what are called private ledgers, because central banks aren't going to allow us, certainly, for example, to see how they're transacting. And so what I'm imagine is going to happen, and this, whenever I'm speculating, I will make sure to point out that I'm speculating. These private ledgers will eventually have to settle on the public ledger, and I imagine it'll be once a week or once a month or something like that, where the Federal Reserve will just settle whatever it has to settle on public ledgers, right? And then that will likely be available for us to find. Because again, there is truly, unless it is a private sidechain, there is nothing that can't be figured out on almost nothing that can be figured out on blockchain. So I think we will probably, I think the government will most likely, at least in these strategic reserves, make known what is in there.
Right. And now my understanding is blockchain technology is for example, and not just being used for money, but there's a discussion that they want to try to use blockchain for like voting. And so if you put all the votes in, and maybe could you explain how that would work? Because I mean, I kind of understand the romance of it. I mean, I understand why they would want to do that because it would be secure. But how would that look? How would that work?
So I think, yeah, I'm not sure exactly how the voting system will work. I mean, it will definitely involve a digital identification on a digital wallet, which I'm not sure exactly if it's going to be a tokenized transaction type of thing, maybe some non-fungible token that you can, cast your vote with, something like that. I don't know the details of how the voting system will work, but I know that certainly has been floated. But I think also maybe we should like slow down a little bit and talk about what cryptocurrency is and then what
Yeah.
a blockchain is. Because the cryptocurrency is kind of what its name implies. It is a currency in digital form. It is essentially the tokens on the system. And the analogy I like to use, it's a very, very basic analogy, is it's like a hose with water flowing through it. A hose is the blockchain, which a blockchain, by the way, is a distributed ledger. And every time there's a transaction, a block is added to this distributed ledger. And every single new transaction is securely encrypted and distributed to all participants within this blockchain. So imagine this hose going to every computer on the network. And within these computers on the network, these networks are called these computers are called nodes, and and depending on the technology that's being used, because these cryptocurrencies are not all the same, certainly, and the technology they use are different. A certain percentage of the nodes on the network must approve each transaction. So the hose is like this blockchain distributed ledger, and the cryptocurrencies are kind of like the water that's flowing through that, except this water can flow to other hoses and to other blockchains and vice versa. And there's cryptocurrencies that perform that. I mean, a really important one actually called the Oracle technology. And so cryptocurrency itself is also a misnomer. While there are a subsection of these digital assets, I like to use the term digital asset. I think it's a little better. Maybe it's not the best term for it, but a subsection of these digital assets are currencies. They are intended for payments. Certainly, there are many, 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 many more technologies within the cryptocurrency hood, which we will certainly talk about.
Right. Yeah. And so I guess a question I would have is so you've got Bitcoin. Bitcoin has its own Bitcoin blockchain. So there's a Bitcoin coin, Bitcoin, and let's just take one at random. Let's say Doge, which is just a meme coin. Is that a cryptocurrency that's using somebody else's blockchain?
I believe, I'm not a Doge expert. I believe Doge has its own blockchain as well.
Okay.
But you're right. Most cryptos, as I mentioned, there are many, many thousands of cryptocurrencies. Most of them actually use the blockchain called Ethereum. So Ethereum, there's a cryptocurrency called Ethereum, and then that is on the blockchain. So it is the Ethereum token is the native token of the Ethereum ledger. The Bitcoin token is the native token of the Bitcoin ledger, the Bitcoin blockchain, right? And so again, you can move cryptocurrencies between these blockchains, but this is a really important point. The hegemonic, the dominant native crypto asset on these blockchains is where you're going to want to be. I mean, those are the ones that are going to really be moving all the action on each blockchain. And so like the more and progressed analogy would be that it's like a blockchain is like a road, a highway, where you have all these different types of vehicles going back and forth on this highway that represent these different technologies. And then the native cryptocurrency is like the gas that fuels the movement of all of these other technologies on there.
Right. So okay, so suppose that the three of us and Dominic's on here, and we decide, okay, we're gonna release a cryptocurrency called On the Edge. Because I mean, I like Donald Trump did it, right? And you got some other celebrities, I don't even want to name them, but some celebrities that have issued their own coins. How do you do that?
Well, I don't exactly know. I've never done it. I've never investigated how to do it. I am that you would just find some. I know it's not that difficult. I mean,
Right.
despite not having looked into it, because again, there's what Donald Trump released, and what Doge is the number one of this type of technology is called the meme coin, which are essentially just a picture, just a thing that say, hey, I have this. Like there's other big ones are, dog with hat and Pepe and like all these weird things. And I have for years knocked them, as being useless things, but
Mhm.
where I invested in them from instead of some of the other ones, I think I would have done a lot better monetarily speaking. But I think the day is coming when that is ending.
Right.
So and that is the meme coin craze that kind of actually gives cryptocurrency a bad name, so to speak.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I would call it. I mean, they're what you would call greater fool assets. So I mean, because we invested in Doge at one time, kind of wrote it up and didn't do real well. I think we made a few bucks, but basically you're buying. There is no intrinsic value. Doge has no
right,
intrinsic value. Now,
yeah,
if you and I decide that it's worth 18 cents per coin, then it's worth 18 cents per coins. But basically,
mhm,
I'm investing in it because I'm a fool and I'm assuming that a greater fool than me is going to invest in it for more money. And that's
mhm,
really how I get out of it. I make a lot of money.
yeah,
And so you hear the expression a lot of times pump and dump,
mhm,
where somebody puts out a coin and maybe it's got a lot of hype around it and it's got real excited and it goes way up. And then the people who own most of them sell out, it collapses back down. Most of the investors lose a lot of money and the people who maybe sponsor the coin make a bunch of money. So I mean, it is
right,
kind of a little bit of a wild west type of a thing now. Now,
absolutely,
Bitcoin, I think Bitcoin, XRP, and Ethereum, and maybe Solana, are more. They're not meme coins. There's actual function that's tied to those. And do you want to talk? I mean, I apologize if I'm getting this out of order here, but
no, it's okay, yeah, like that. So those are utility coins. These actually perform, as you mentioned, they perform some function in the real world. Um, they're they have value. They actually have far more value than the US dollar. The US dollar again only does stuff because we all agree it should be worth $1. Where these things actually can move value across the globe in the speed of an email, for example, which is actually a revolutionary technology. And so on that, I would like to introduce we talked about meme coins already. That's one subset of what cryptocurrencies, but let's talk about the real meat and potatoes of the technologies here. And these are the payment tokens, the smart contract tokens, non-fungible tokens, NFTs, and really the big one that's going to be germane to everyone in short order here is the stable coins. And as mentioned, there are several other technologies here that I'm not even going to touch on, like file storage and security tokens and blah, blah, blah. I mean, the list goes on. There's a ton of technologies here, but I want to focus on these four big ones. And we can start with payments because this is what Bitcoin was originally designed for, was the peer-to-peer, decentralized. It means there's no central authority saying, no, you can't do that. Payments, right? And that's what Bitcoin is. And it started out as that. That's what Satoshi Nakamoto's paper, you know, said it should be. And the problem, the failings of Bitcoin actually have now shifted Bitcoin's narrative to a store of value. Okay, and the reason is because it uses a technology called proof of work. In that introductory video, which was really cool to see, I think it looked pretty old. I think he
it was
said
old. It was
Bitcoin
7 or 8
was,
years old. Yeah.
yeah, it looks like it said 2017 and Bitcoin got to $20,000. Well, it started at less than $1, so I mean, huge upside there. But he highlighted the downfalls of it. You have to have an intense electricity use to mine every single transaction, and then these people who do this transaction mining are rewarded with a Bitcoin. Well, he said 1 Bitcoin at the time, which must have been, I think it was probably true then. But Bitcoin in its technology has what's called the halving, and every 4 years, essentially that block reward is halved. And so we're now, I believe, at you get 0.25 Bitcoin for every mining thing, every time you mine a transaction, right? And I think last year, the energy that Bitcoin used across the globe was tantamount to the energy used by the country of Denmark. So it uses a lot of energy, and there are technologies that are faster as a result because they don't have to do this mining thing. They're faster and they're much cheaper, right? And so these are the tokens that are, in my opinion, going to be actually leading the charge in the future. Now, the reason that these payment tokens are so important is that they solve many pain points of the current payment setup that we've all been using our whole lives. The first aspect I want to talk about is that a payment involves two parts. So there's the message. So Bank A says to Bank B, hey, a payment's coming, it's going to be this amount. And then there's the actual settlement of that payment, which are two very different things. And the reason our apps look like things are moving around really quickly is because the message goes, and then your bank says, oh, I know this is coming from a trusted sender, so I believe certainly that the settlement will certainly take place, so I'll update this person's bank account. Well, the settlement, again, can take up to days, and especially if you're talking about cross-border payments, cross-border remittances, these type of things, okay? Because right now the saying is if you want to send money to your buddy over there in India, the fastest way to get him the money right now, and the cheapest way, well, besides your plane ticket, is to put the money in a briefcase and fly it to him and hand it to him. Because the reason is there are only a certain amount of banks that can do cross-border payments, and these are called correspondent banks. So you go to your local bank, you say, hey, I want to send $1,000 to India. Well, the bank says, okay, well, if that's not a correspondent bank you're dealing with, they're going to take their fee, and then they're going to go to the correspondent bank, and that correspondent bank is going to get the message and settlement, and they're going to take their fee. They're going to go across borders to the correspondent bank in India. It's going to take its fee, and it's going to have to settle, and then it's going to go down to the local bank where your buddy's at, and they're going to take their fee. So this process takes a long time. And not only that, within these correspondent banks that deal with each other, there's the nostro voso problem, which from the perspective of the sending bank, the nostro account would be our account with Bank B in India. That is the nostro account. But from the perspective of Bank B in India, it's the voso account. It's the correspondent bank there in America. And so right now it's estimated that there is approximately $5 trillion of all these different fiat currencies from across the globe sitting in these large pools that could otherwise greatly move the velocity of money and increase liquidity in the system. They're just sitting there waiting to execute this slow nostro voso payment problem. And so what's going to happen with these payment tokens is that instead of having to hold large accounts of the Chinese renminbi, the Japanese yen, et cetera, these correspondent banks have every currency. Instead of having to sit in large amounts of these currencies, all you need is the payment token because it can move and change into every single one of these currencies. So it does it 3 seconds. It's the speed of an email. You send it, and the coins themselves are also the message and the settlement all in one. So all of these things are going to greatly increase the speed of transactions and money velocity of the world, and they're going to make them much, 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 much cheaper. And so if you are one of these financial masters of the world and you move millions and millions, if not billions of dollars a day, this is going to save you millions and millions of dollars a day. So from a technological point of view and from a money saving point of view, these things are a must be. Okay. And so that's the short and dirty on the payment tokens.
Now, Dr. How are the payment tokens different than, let's say, I've got a Venmo account or I've got a PayPal account or something like that? Because this is going to be much more sophisticated technology, right?
Yeah, well, absolutely. And even some of those things you mentioned, I know PayPal has a technology that we're going to talk about in a little bit called stablecoins. They're issuing their own stablecoin to achieve this level of efficiency because right now PayPal and Venmo, they operate on that I'm not sure exactly how they've got the fees reduced on their payments that they use, but they still use this older, outdated system. And so, which is again why they're starting to issue their own cryptocurrency stablecoins, right?
Right. Let me put a comment up here while we're kind of queuing up the next topic here. Florida Low Carb says so that with respect to cryptocurrencies, you have to see which money will actually have have stability in its monetary policy and functionality to maintain value over space and over time. So, I mean, I guess the analogy I would give out here is you talked about how there are thousands of crypto coins originally in the first days of the automobile industry. There were thousands, hundreds or thousands of car manufacturers, and most of them, for one reason or another, went out of business because they did not have the stability to, like you say, maintain value over space and over time. And so you had most of them go out of business, and you ended up with just a handful that survived. And I'm guessing that we're looking at kind of the same dynamic now, right?
Yeah, and these things settle so fast that over 3 seconds they're stable, and so that really isn't a concern. And not only that, once the world is running on these things, there's going to be so many users that the price will inevitably be stable because you'll have orders of magnitude more buyers and sellers at each price point, and so eventually, like it'll become far more stable than it is right now.
Right. Okay, no, that makes sense. So, next question here: with the next liquidity pump, it is highly probable that Bitcoin dominance will fall. Monero's modest inflation is not enough of a reason to call it bro. Now, Monero, I have actually, honestly, never heard of Monero. Are you familiar with that?
I've heard of it in passing. I haven't investigated Monero too much. I believe it is a payment crypto,
Okay.
um, but I don't know enough about Monero.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of taking you off topic. So if you want
It's
to,
okay. I also can't see the comments if you're putting them up there. It's I'm recording on my phone and it's a little weird.
oh, okay,
So
okay,
yeah.
gotcha. All right, if you want to go ahead and
Yeah.
keep
So
going, this is
yep,
good.
yep. So the second technology I mentioned is a smart contract crypto, and the big famous one is Ethereum. There's also things like Algorand and Cardano are smart contract blockchains. And a smart contract is a self-executing program that automates the actions required in a blockchain. So once the transaction is completed, they are irreversible and trackable. And so this is the future of like house and car payments, for example, because you're going to agree on a blockchain, on a smart contract blockchain with the person, the dealership you're buying your car from or whatever, and you're going to agree to pay X amount of US dollar stablecoin or whatever it's going to be. You could probably even, excuse me, select Ethereum or Bitcoin or XRP or Solana or any of these. And then it's an algorithmic, automatically deducted payment. And you can choose with blockchains, not only will you be getting paid from your job more than once every 2 weeks, probably daily, potentially hourly. You can agree to pay from your smart contract to the car dealership daily, weekly, monthly, however you agree to do that. And then once the contract is agreed to, it will just automatically be deducted from your digital wallet thenceforth until the payment is completed. And I'll paint a picture for what that looks like in full detail once we get to the end of this talk. So smart contracts are a very important technology that is also within the cryptocurrencies that are going to revolutionize payments.
Do the smart contracts then do those actually cut out the need for a bank? So I can literally just do business with the car dealership and don't have
Absolutely.
to use a bank.
Absolutely. And thank you for asking that. That's one thing I forgot to mention. So when I gave my little spiel about technique, this blockchain technique I envisioning, and I am speculating, but I think it's spot on, is going to eliminate a lot of human jobs. For example, the middlemen. The middlemen in a lot of transactions no longer need to be there. Your stockbrokers, I mean, accountants, I mean, blockchain automates accounting, period, full stop. I think the IRS can go away because they can just simply automatically take out taxes, whatever. I think in fact, if I were a betting man, I would say that your taxes are going to be taken at the exchange level. Once you buy or sell your cryptos and you move to fiat, boom, right away the IRS, the government is going to take its pound of flesh right there. And so I think this will eliminate many human jobs, and that's a very important question. And so yes, smart contracts, in my opinion, will get rid of several middlemen in the schema, and it's sad because those are people that are supporting themselves and supporting families and that type of thing.
Yeah,
And so
I
that
can
is
actually put myself on there because I work for a company that that manages basically helps to provide serious security for the transaction. So from Walmart to your bank, they provide that security. Now there may still be a role, some security role there, but for the most part, if they're one of the middlemen, they get cut out. So for me, I'm looking at it, and as this gets adopted, the need for my company, the need for my job is probably not really there. That's one of the reasons I'm kind of trying to take any cash that I have on hand now and put it into crypto because, at least that if I end up losing my job because of crypto, at least I will have been an early adopter and, can maybe retire young.
yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing the same opinion and having some real world data there. I mean, I think yeah, I think it's inevitable that that's why I introduced this idea of technique, because again, we are getting towards a point where we're reaching high efficiencies in many things. For example, I think Elon Musk's Doge, I think they're eliminating a lot of positions in the U.S. government, which I think we can all agree is a good thing, but they're eliminating human jobs. I think they're not decreasing the size of government. They're just replacing these things with automated technologies like blockchain. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if Doge is literally the blockchain that the government and Doge uses in the
Right.
future,
Right.
So it's something that we all must be aware of what's coming.
Yeah, and we had a comment. I'm gonna go ahead and put the comment back up here, and I'll read it out since you can't read it. It just says, with all of the cyber attacks happening constantly now, I think this is extremely dangerous and risky. And I guess that's a good question. I mean, where do you see the cyber risk that's introduced here?
Yeah, in my opinion, the most money is digital already, and the current system that we're on is just as susceptible, if not more, to cyber attacks than any blockchain system would be.
Right. Okay. No, that makes
Yep.
sense. So,
Uh,
let me ask one more here because I think this came up earlier. The question is, I am concerned about currency being replaced with CBDCs. Do you want to talk maybe a little bit about what is a CBDC and how is it different from
yeah.
a cryptocurrency?
So can we put a pin in that one, because we will be
Yeah,
discussing that.
you're gonna get back.
I've kind of
Okay,
yeah, I've kind of
perfect.
got this ordered, so we'll kind of reach a crescendo there, and
Okay,
CBDCs will absolutely we'll definitively talk about those.
okay. Why don't you go ahead and
Um,
I'll let you get back on target here.
Yeah, so we've talked about payments, we talked about smart contracts. The next one I want to talk about is another very important technology. It's called non-fungible tokens, or NFTs. And what an NFT is a unique cryptographic token that exists on a blockchain and cannot be replicated. Um, and you can watch BlackRock CEO Larry Finkelstein on several major news outlets talk about extolling the virtues of real world asset tokenization, and talking about things like stocks being put on blockchain, T-bills being put on blockchain, um, your house will be put on blockchain, and it will be represented on a blockchain in a non-fungible token. And so you will show ownership of your house by, in your digital wallet, you will possess your non-fungible token that has within it has a picture of your house. It's going to have, you remodeled the kitchen in 2016, et cetera, et cetera. All these details about the house, the square footage, the lot acreage, et cetera, et cetera. All of these things, all that data will be within your the NFT that represents your house. And so they intend to put the entire economy represented in tokenized form on blockchains. And so yeah, like proof of another examples are proof of ownership of anything, proof of insurance, even art will be put on blockchain, and that's kind of a cool one where it's if you want to buy, you know, one 1,000th of some beautiful painting that you love, you can actually own it, and then 1/1000th of it, and when it goes on display at some art gala, you can actually earn, you know, part of the ticket fees for people to come and see that piece of art. So some of these things are really cool, but it's also, again, a very progressive monetary system we're going into. And so non-fungible tokens are a thing that is going to happen and is a very important thing to understand.
Yep. Now let me ask a here's an interesting question. I think that comes up here. Scott asked, so we can't transact properly without the internet, and it's like that seems accurate.
Right. I think some of these blockchains actually do operate without the internet. Um, but right, we can't I mean, by and large, I don't think you and I will be able to transact without the internet. Right.
Right. Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. So
Yep.
okay.
And so the next big technology is called stable coins. This is perhaps the most important technology within cryptocurrencies. And a stable coin is a cryptocurrency that is pegged to the value of a fiat currency. So one US dollar stable coin has the same exact value as one US dollar. Okay. And right now there's, I think the third or fourth biggest cryptocurrency by market cap is called USDT, which is US dollar tether. And right now that's I think the market cap value of it is some 83, 84, 85 billion dollars, something in there, but it does many, many billions of dollars of transaction value every single day. And the reason this is so important and is that recently the Secretary of Treasury is a man named Scott Bessent, and I just want to say give a little aside here too. So Secretary of Treasury is this man named Scott Bessent. Scott Bessent is the highest ranking sodomite we've ever had in the history of the US government. The Secretary of Treasury, I think, is like fourth or fifth in line of succession to the presidency.
Yeah.
And Scott Bessent is married with children. He was a hedge fund manager for a little man named George Soros. I don't know if you've heard of him. He made George Soros billions and billions of dollars, and now he's our Treasury Secretary. And so he's sitting there next to Donald Trump on this was a couple weeks ago. And here's his quote. He said, "We are going to put a lot of thought into the stable coin regime. And as President Trump has directed, we are going to keep the US dollar the dominant reserve currency in the world, and we will use stable coins to do that." And at that same conference, President Trump said, "I also want to express my strong support for the efforts of lawmakers in Congress as they work on bills to provide regulatory certainty for dollar-backed stablecoins and the digital assets market." So this 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 stablecoin technology is highly important. It is what is going to bring all of us, all people eventually onto the blockchain transaction world. And President Trump himself is the crypto president. He appointed a Jewish man named David Sachs as the AI and crypto czar, which is the first time, obviously, that we've ever had someone like that in a position in the U.S. government. He's already hosted a crypto summit with the biggest players in the crypto world and parts of the biggest companies and the biggest blockchains. And he's, as we've alluded to earlier, he's announced a strategic reserve stockpile of various digital assets. And he's currently also filling his cabinet with pro crypto people in every position where a cryptocurrency can play a role. I know the SEC has been really the last 4 years plus has been hammering cryptocurrency, and that's changing. They're putting a guy named Paul Atkins in there who is all out there outspoken in favor of cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. And there's also now multiple bills on stablecoins in front of Congress, and they expect within the next few months that these stablecoin bills will be signed into law, and they have strong bipartisan support. Now, let's get back to this question of central bank digital currency. A central bank digital currency, by definition, is a stable coin, and it is simply issued by a central bank. And so, you know, we've all heard of the dangers of stable coins, and the dangers are very real. I mean, I doubt here in the United States we're going to get the same exact stablecoin / central bank digital currency schema that they get in China on day one. In fact, I think that'd be foolish if that was the case, because I think that would, actually wake Americans up into doing something. But you can watch a man named Bo Li from the IMF openly. Bo Li was the former head of the People's Bank of China, PBOC, which is the Central Bank of China. He's the former head of the PBOC, and he goes to the IMF, which is one of these, it's the International Monetary Fund. It's one of these global central banks. And he's openly discussed the programmability of central bank digital currencies. So what that means is they can program your digital wallet to only be able to spend $30, 30 US dollar coins, or whatever it's going to be, 30 US dollar coins on gas every month, or beef every month, or something like that. That's what they mean by programmability. And you can watch also a man named Augustine Carsons. And this was interesting. I actually remember I was watching this interview live, because it was a discussion between Augustine Carsons, who's the general manager of the Bank for International Settlements, which is considered the central bank of central banks. It was him, Jerome Powell, who's the chair of our Federal Reserve, and then Kristalina Georgieva, who's the managing director of the IMF. And in this conversation, and this was in 2020, in this conversation, Augustine Carsons said openly, he says, we can't track the $100 bill. We don't know where the 1,000 peso bill is, but with central bank digital currencies, we will have complete control. Now, stable coins in themselves are obviously morally neutral. I think, these technologies could actually make people, if used properly, could make people wealthy. They could unleash a lot of wealth, just in the savings and increasing liquidity in markets. I mean, these things actually really help people. If you reduce 10% fees on remittance payments, you make people in much poorer countries 10% richer, which for them is a lot of money. But the way that these things, I think, will be implemented is truly worrisome. And I think what's happening is that our current president and government is selling conservative America on the blockchain, and to get us on board without a fight. And I think he's probably going to be highly successful. Now, it's interesting to speculate that if the US Treasury starts settling US dollar transactions in US dollar pegged cryptocurrencies, especially if we get over half, like 50% of all transactions that the US Treasury is doing, I think that stablecoin becomes a de facto US dollar. And what we're staring at here is we're on the brink of the most progressive monetary system this world's ever seen being unleashed upon us. And I think it's we ought to be quite worried about this.
Let me yeah, because I mean, what you're obviously, any good Catholic, any good Christian is going to have thoughts of the mark of the beast, and somebody's saying here, crypto sounds like the mark of the beast, no purchasing unless you're in the system, and that makes a certain amount of sense. I mean, what we're being fed to begin with is efficiency. It's use, anybody can use it, and it's anonymous, and you got a lot of promise to it, but it just seems like when it's this technological, when it's this advanced, when it's this intelligent, it's just ripe to be taken over by the wrong forces that are going to use it to shut out, to debank those that they don't agree with.
Right, and I think they're going to use it first to bank the unbanked, is the term that's floated around, and they're trying to get cell phones in all of the African people's hands, and then get them a bank account, a digital wallet, and then get them on blockchain so that their lives can be tracked. And it's really interesting, in a book called Between Two Ages, a man named Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was a huge technocrat from basically late 60s to 2010s. Very important man. He posited this idea that whenever there's this a great leap in technology, what happens is it manifests new behaviors in people. And he talked about, and not excuse me, not just new behaviors, new ideologies. And he posited the Industrial Revolution spawned this atheistic communism, and the Between Two Ages is actually Between Two Ages, America's Role in the Technotronic Era. The Technotronic Era, this book was published in 1970. The Technotronic Era, he said, was dawning there with this new age of instant communications with radio and television, where you can become a cosmopolitan citizen by peering into the Indias and Zimbabwe's and China's of the world through the video lens. It's spawning this scientific this age of scientism. And internet certainly represents another leap in this. And in my opinion, it's people becoming automated, their behaviors and thoughts, consciousness becoming automated. And with blockchain and the internet of value, this new internet that's going to be coming here, with not just the internet of information, but the internet of money and transactions and value coming, we are going to witness the further automation of humans and the human thought, human consciousness, and therefore human behavior. And so it's the mark of the beast. But certainly, I mean, it's certainly high potential for something like that. I don't know that anyone knows exactly what that is going to look like, and so I'm not going to say that that's, in my opinion, 100% what it is. But it certainly lends itself to something like that, absolutely. And so, yeah, it is something honestly, I think it's really, really bad for humanity. I'm going to say it. I think it's something that we uh, at least we should guarantee people that are operating these systems should be virtuous and good people, which we certainly can't guarantee.
No, it's one of the things that we talk about around our house a lot when it comes to technology, and this is the part of, because I mean, I've been a big Donald Trump fan. I was, at least if nothing else, is great, better than Kamala Harris. We were boiled frogs. We had to jump out of the pot, all that kind of stuff. But where I really get concerned with Trump and Elon Musk both, and basically, I mean, Scott Bissett and the rest of this administration now, is we ask the question, what can we do technologically? We don't ask the question, what should we do? What's the best for humanity? What's the moral thing? What's going to push us to heaven? We don't ask that question. We only ask, what is technology capable of? And I know, for example, I mean, you've got not only cryptocurrencies, and you've got stable coins and all this technology. You got artificial general intelligence, artificial super intelligence that's starting to come up now, that is incredibly scary in terms of what it could do. We could be sowing the seeds of our own destruction.
Well, I think we absolutely are. And this advancement of technique that the engineers, scientists, technologists of the world are doing, they're putting the future generation, themselves and their children, out of jobs. And I think Elon Musk, again, is almost to state my opinion on him. I'm not going to tell you I'm 100% correct. Of course, I don't know. But to me, the way I see Elon Musk is an actor that is attached to a tremendous bank account that is used to sell the fourth industrial revolution to the public. And now they're doing it to conservatives. This is a guy who has like 11 kids from 10 different women. He was wearing, a couple Halloweens ago, he's dressed up in a Baphomet outfit. All of his companies are fourth industrial revolution companies. No one gets grants from the government to start companies at such young ages, like especially to the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars like this man got. You look at his companies again, PayPal was the precursor to these technologies we're talking about. You have the Tesla, which is electric cars. SpaceX, again, putting things in space, of course. The Starlink, which is the satellite spy grid that's going up. Then he has Neuralink, which is putting chips in brains. All of this man's companies are directly from the World Economic Forum for a book called The Fourth Industrial Revolution, which I highly recommend everyone read. And so I think we're at a very precarious situation here, and we really must be careful about who we attach ourselves to, because as I mentioned technique at the beginning, one of the techniques that is definitively advanced the most is the technique of behaviorism and propaganda. And the what you see on news media is so highly potent, it is so highly evocative, it can draw your attachment, the attachment of your heart to what you see on the screen in a far more efficient manner than potentially weeks, months, if not years of meditative and contemplative prayer. I mean, it's very, very scary and potent stuff. And I believe, I'm going to say again, my opinion here, Donald Trump is also a part of this. I think there's everything that we see about Donald Trump that is, and he's going to bring some temporary isms that are
Right.
good, certainly, but those are just temporaryisms. They will go away with the next administration or maybe the one after that. It does not matter. Like he can tell, he has stated he's not going to put the central bank digital currencies out there. Well, he's going to get us all on a stablecoin regime, and then 4 years from now, 8 years from now, the central bank will be able to put a central bank out digital currency out there that we, now that we're all used to paying in stablecoins, it now we'll just do this the central bank one, right? It is
Right.
the next level of the boil the frog slowly. So yeah, I think this is a highly, highly, highly slippery slope we're on, and I think we're zooming down it, to be honest.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Let me ask you a question. This is a really interesting question. I think it gets to one of the benefits of the stable coins here, or Bitcoin. Florida Low Carb asks, he says, ultimately, the moral benefits of Bitcoin is that it makes usury in the form of currency debasement and fractional reserve banking exceedingly expensive, not profitable to engage in. And it's like, okay, well, there is a benefit to Bitcoin.
Yeah, certainly. These technologies will, they can absolutely eliminate many of the problems, including the usury aspect of our current banking system that we're using. Absolutely, 100% agree. I think it will. It can be twisted in that direction, though. I mean, I think there's actually a lot. I mean, I can envision a way in which, and in fact, it's the only one I can think of. I'm not like a particularly bright person, so I'm sure there are other ways. But like one way we can solve the debt problem in this country is through these blockchain technologies. And let's
Mhm.
just, for example, say that Bitcoin is the blockchain that the US government adopts. Well, what they should do is right now, today, buy many, many Bitcoin, as many Bitcoin as they can, and then tokenize the entire United States economy on the Bitcoin blockchain, which would increase the value of Bitcoin by orders of magnitude. And then they can sell the Bitcoin and pay off the 30 whatever trillion dollars of debt we're in, right? So there are a tremendous amount of potential benefits that blockchain represents. And again, if you and I were wielding this, we would try and use this for as many of these benefits as we can and eliminate all the negatives. But we're not talking about men who are moral that are going to be running this thing. We are talking about evil people,
Right.
and so it's I don't the usual any good that comes from it, and it might be 20 years of good, it might be 50 years of good. I don't know. I can't see the future, but eventually the United States will be brought into the Chinese style, communist style central bank digital currency system.
We've had a couple of questions on here, and I can't find. They're a little bit farther back. Folks asking about the social credit score, and I think that all that kind of comes to social credit score is really what I think the substance of that question is: is the government going to have the right or the ability to just cut us off if we don't play the game they want us to play?
Yes, absolutely. Again, not the system that Americans are going to be on right away, in my opinion. I think it would be a tremendous mistake if they put the that hardcore communist social credit score system style thing out right away in America, because I would be out there on the streets saying, "Let's get them, boys," you know. So I think that would be a mistake. But eventually, it's going to be the boil the frog slowly. And yes, as I mentioned, um, the central bank digital currencies will be programmable. They can track everything at your digital wallet level. And so if you at your digital ID will be a non-fungible token that will probably have something like a social credit score number associated with it. And if you're caught doing naughty things, then yes, if you give money to your church, for example, one day, that will be points off your social credit score, right? I mean, that's potentially what we're talking about here. So yes, I think that is something that is probably inevitable.
Right. Okay. So I've gotten you way off topic here. Do you want to get
Okay,
back to the outline, or I know I've got a
sure.
whole
Well,
bunch of questions to finish up here, but let's go ahead and keep rolling through.
yeah. So there's only one more section I wanted, like my notes that I want to talk about here, and that
Okay.
is an example of a future transaction, just to kind of really paint this picture here. Is one will have a digital wallet in which will reside one's digital identification, one stockpile of stable coins, whether it's central bank digital currencies or otherwise, one stockpile of other cryptos. Most people will just have the stable coin, but potentially other cryptos will be there. One's collection of NFTs, again, showing ownership of house, ownership of car, proof of insurance, yada, 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 and which all demonstrate ownership of your various assets. And then when you go to sell your house, a smart contract agreement will be made, which you can choose to settle in the stable coins or again any of these other cryptocurrencies. It'll be your choice if a choice still remains to us. And once that smart contract is executed, the NFT of your house will travel from your digital wallet over a blockchain into the digital wallet of the purchasers. Okay. And then weekly or monthly or daily payments, whatever you agree to on this smart contract, will be drawn from your digital wallet and deposited into the sellers. And this is the future of transaction. And you'll notice there's a lot of middlemen that are no longer involved in that. And this is a highly efficient transaction system. But again, to me, it's inhuman. I mean, I think we're already in a pretty inhuman style system, but I think it's just going to get worse. And this is something that's coming down the pike very quickly for us.
Absolutely. And Father McKenna is here and asked the question. Will and I think you kind of answered this. Will crypto as leading form of currency be the means to eliminate the national debt?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, I mentioned again. I think if I were doing the government thing, right? If I were the president, and also I want to say too, I think the president and the presidency is a lot like our current problem in the church with the papacy. I think if we had a true president, I don't want to offend anyone, but if we had a real president, I think they do actually could wield a lot of power, just like if we had an actual pope. Same thing. And if you or I were president, I would say, you know what, let's just buy tons of whatever crypto we choose, and then tokenize as much of our economy as we possibly can, which will definitively drive up the price of the native cryptocurrency on that blockchain, and then we can have enough to sell where we can eliminate the national debt. And there's a lot of talk of this. Perhaps you've heard it. I'm not like fluent in this. It's the Nisara Jasara. It's
Yeah.
a very interesting theory. It involves a debt jubilee, something like that. But I think this is going to be used where it's a debt jubilee where something like the price of gold soars, because the theory is, I believe, I could be incorrect on the details, but the theory is that central banks on their ledger have a gold revaluation column where they can, and they know they own the certain amount of gold, so they can revalue gold also to equal the debt they're owed, and they do a debt jubilee. It's just what happens is people that have debt um, become essentially servants, serfs, not serfs, indentured servants, and so they really can't buy and own things any longer. So there's a lot. I have absolutely no idea what's going to happen in the future, but it is an interesting time. It's something, I think we're on the brink of some large changes. I don't know when. I think 2030 is probably a pretty safe guess for when most of us will be forced onto the blockchain system. I think certainly by 2035, I think it's pretty easy to say that we all will be forced onto it. And so a lot of these scenarios are possible. They're possible.
And I think that leads to really the question that I want to ask, and probably a lot of people are thinking as well, is okay, so now we're in 2025. We've got years to prepare for 2030 and 10 years to prepare for 2035. And what can we do? I mean, should we be considering the Benedict option? Should we be considering, moving to a rural place and trying to raise our own livestock and get out of the system before it gets implemented? Or is it
Yeah.
one of those things we just can't avoid it and we're just going to have to kind of roll with it?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think certainly as doing as much as you can to become self-sustainable is always advisable. However, I do think, they have satellites that can look at blades of grass, so they're going to find you. I don't think there's any escaping it. And to me, that's also kind of and this isn't a statement from judgment. It's just I think it's kind of the cowardly thing to do. I think we need to be standing up and actively pushing back against this system, and especially not our brothers and sisters in faith, but our brothers and sisters in America, that are out there that are languishing under the yoke of this, and they have no idea because they're being so inundated with this absolutely toxic and degenerate culture that they have grown to love, and has so altered their ideologies and that and they've so adapted to it that they can't imagine a possible different way forward. I think we need to do as much as we can, possibly can, after one gets his own house in order, to speak out and help them. And I think, honestly, I think if we're to reestablish any semblance of traditionalism, I think we really need a brand new way forward. I certainly don't have any pie in the sky hopes of returning to monarchical theocracy. Certainly, I don't think that's possible anymore. I don't think the human psyche can possibly revert, to 200 years, 300 years ago, whenever, I don't think that's possible anymore. But I think we need something else going forward, because I think this American system is what we live in is no longer an American system. I think it's an international system. I think we live in a global hegemonic culture. The only difference between us and your average Chinese man is that, like our dudes kick the ball in the back of the net a little better than your dudes do now. By and large, we all wake up, we have our not we listening to this podcast, but the general we wake up, we have our Tang and Pop Tarts, turn on the TV right away. Then we go to our our cubicle where we're baking under LED lights for 40 hours a week. We come home, turn the tube back on, get programmed by the nightly news, and then do X, Y, and Z number of degenerate things, go to sleep, and then just rinse and repeat. Right? There's very little human activity anymore. I think that must be stopped.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, and I think you make a really good point to a point to ponder here is that if you look at our situation, it's almost like it's a technological version of what the ancient Romans went through, and they were under surveillance. They were every day could be their last day. And what did they do? They did conclave together to a certain extent, but then when the Roman soldiers showed up, I remember hearing stories about how they would put tattoos of a fish at that point on their wrists so that they would not deny their faith. And so they accepted that they were a part of this system. They didn't flee it. They stood up and they accepted whatever God's will was for them. And a lot of times it was martyrdom. That could be our fate too. It may be that we are returning to, the church is basically returned to the catacomb as it is. And perhaps we are returning to ancient Rome as Christians ourselves.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree more. I feel so, I did a podcast. It's like it's been purged off of YouTube now, but getting into a lot of these subjects when I was reading from the horse's mouth, so to speak, the technocrats who 100 years ago were talking about this system and they were writing about it. They knew that no one even 100 years ago was going to read this stuff. And I feel so bad for us because the deck is so stacked against your average child born into this world. I feel so bad for them, and I think it's a relieving message too, because it's like we're born into a system that is designed to destroy us, mind, body, and soul, and to make us call sin good and to love sin. I feel so bad for these people. It's like and I think as Catholics, we really should get all on the same page on this stuff and really start once we are able to get out there and really start proselytizing and showing them and develop memes, if you will, so we can kind of for the elect that are languishing under this system, that they can hear what they need to hear, and then we give them the next step as, oh, here's the actual truth of the world, and all that depression and evil stuff that you were trained from day one to call good, all of that, all of this evil that and is not your fault. Yes, there's no escaping. They have some culpability. They use their will for evil at some point. But boy, this ain't 1200s Italy. Like we are born into a system like the likes of which the world's never seen before, and it is a system of very close to complete mind and behavior control from birth to death. And it is a beast system, and voting ain't going to put it away. And I think voting, again, my opinion, voting for this, I think, is assenting to it. Even if your guy doesn't win, you're saying, oh, okay, this system gets to keep going. All the terrible, terrible, evil, immoral things that are out there. Yep, keep going. Um, Again, my opinion. So I think we really should have more of these types of discussions where we kind of come to an understanding of the place and time in history where we're at and what we're up against. And I think it is us. I think it's us. I think we are so incredibly blessed to have the true faith here in perhaps the church's darkest hour. And it is our Lord giving us a higher calling to do something better, to live for something more, and to show people that there's more to live for. And so you're right. I if I could die and put an end to the system, I'm a dead man, happily.
Right.
Yes, sir. Put me in my grave right now. I want to go see my Lord. So please, and if it's gonna wake other people up, kill me now. So I think I want to hopefully transmit that, hey, this, like, just actively sitting and just consuming and doing nothing and just consuming is really, we're coming to a point where that's not enough anymore.
Yeah, well, we had a little thought experiment that we did with we have a men's group. It's kind of lost some zing, but I mean, for a while we were meeting every month, and we had one of the thought exercises basically said, okay, guys, power's going down this afternoon, and it's down for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. What do we do? Where do we meet? How do we feed ourselves? How do we stay warm? Okay, and just the act of going through that kind of a thought experiment, it was not to be depressed. It was not to say woe is me, but as men, especially of families, our role is to step forward and to find solutions, to fight through these problems, to act as Christians, and to make sure we don't obsess, we don't we don't wring our hands, we don't spend our every waking moment trying to think, oh, what am I going to do in this situation? But it's a good thing for us to be ready to know how we're going to act should the opportunity present itself.
Yeah, certainly. And the men's groups, absolutely. We have some here at St. Gertrude's. Um, Absolutely start doing those things if you're at parishes or small missions where you don't do that stuff. Really start getting together and talking about those type of things, and talking about how you can get your parish in order and get ready for anything. But most importantly, and I was at a mission for. Father McKenna was my priest for I don't even know, many years. And now I'm here at St. Gertrude's where I get the sacraments every day, and I can't tell you, it is night and day difference. I think we must gather around our Lord. We really ought to be attending and frequenting sacraments as much as we possibly can, because I think we've reached a point where, I used to be, 3-4 years ago, I used to be of the opinion that, like, yeah, there's going to be some natural uprising. I think people are starting to wake up. I don't think that anymore. I think
No.
I think if the change is going to happen through humans, I think it's got to be us, because we have the truth, period, full stop. And I think it's got to be our Lord working through us that accomplishes this. And so I think it behooves every one of us to become as perfect as we possibly can be. And so, again, gather around our Lord, going to the benedictions and the 40 hours, and attending mass with your whole heart, and getting your house in order, and getting your house, and to love our Lord as much as you possibly can. I think this is the golden bullet, so to speak, a silver bullet, excuse me, that I actually think it's the only thing that can stop what's coming.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would add that if you're a guy, I've gone through this several times. You're considering a career change. You're looking at your life kind of big picture. I can't stress enough. I live in near Omaha, and work just down the street from church, so I'm able to get to weekday mass, and I just can't tell you enough. Just like with St. Gertrude's, how much of a benefit that means. If you're a guy who is considering a job change or whatever it is, and you don't live near mass, do it. And just if you got to take a 20% pay cut, if your family's going to suffer financially, whatever it is, you will benefit eternally, but you're also going to benefit emotionally, spiritually, in every other way if you can get yourself near a mass. And you can, there are places like, and I haven't seen Father Geckel on here tonight, but I know we like to pitch Father Geckel. He's down in Arkansas, and it's very rural down there, very inexpensive place to live. It's hard to find a job, but it's a very inexpensive place to live. And look at options and try to figure out, where can I go to take care of the spiritual needs of my family, because that is number one.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's I think Saint Gertrude herself said that every time you simply glance at our Lord in the Blessed Sacrament, your position in heaven is raised. So if you're worried about losing 20% of earthly pay, imagine what your future reward is going to be like in eternity. I mean, it's really not even a comparison that's even worth mentioning, let alone if you receive our Lord in the Blessed Sacrament every day. I mean, it is a sign of greatness. It is the highest act the human animal can make. And so I think like you, Dan, I can't recommend it enough.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're kind of getting towards the end. I'm not seeing a lot of questions on here. I think we've answered the questions about CBDC. That basically, yeah, it's coming. Donald Trump says it's not going to be CBDC, and I've had the same instinct too, Dr. Dan. That I think when he says it, he means it. But basically, it's kind of like they're going to put it off here, they're going to bring it in here, and then eventually they're going to merge somewhere down the road, somewhere some future president or something like that, and they're going to get.
Yep.
So I mean, that was really one of the big questions I wanted to ask you tonight. Was and I think I've got the answer, which is that is the government, even though we're basically technically anonymous, they're still going to be able to know enough about us so that, like you said, if we gave money to our church, if we voted Republican, if we do whatever we want, whatever we did that offends the system, if we did any of that, then they're still going to be able to take action. And so really this beast system, I don't even know if it I mean, of course the book of the Apocalypse says it's going to be a mark on your forehead or on your hand, and maybe it'll eventually come to that. But I feel like the infrastructure is basically in place now.
Absolutely, 100%. The only wrinkle that might happen is the U.S. Treasury actually putting a stable coin out that is the U.S. dollar, and that would potentially subvert the central bank. Again, I highly doubt that scenario. That would be interesting, but yeah, nothing on there is anonymous. Like even the early Bitcoin, I think it's like Silk Road stuff. It's not an anonymous system. They can track you down on transactions on the blockchain far easier than cash, certainly. So yeah, I don't think there's escaping it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me go ahead and I think maybe we'll do some final thoughts here before we close out. William, you've been just a chatterbox tonight.
I tell you what, I love too much hearing the sound of my own voice that I can't stop myself sometimes. No, there were a couple times when I had a question, but that you asked them for me, and also a couple questions that I was kind of rolling around in my head to ask someone from the comments. So this was incredibly informative for me. I am a much better informed than I was before this. About blockchain, stable coins, and crypto, Bitcoin in general. So very, very grateful for the opportunity to speak my mind often, and do a little bit of listening as well.
Very good. And I'll go ahead and get some last thoughts and then let you have the final word, Dr. Dan. And I'm the same way. I think I've known some about the mechanics. I've known some about how it works, the store of value, the payment systems, all that kind of stuff. I don't think I've really appreciated where this is going, how quickly it's going, how absolutely dangerous it is, and how the world 10, 20 years from now, we may not recognize it, but I think we have to be ready to just not run from it, stand in front of it, deal with it, and whatever God's will is for us, that's where we go with it. That's my final thought.
Yeah, and that I echo that, and my final thought is just a gratitude. Thank you very much again for having me on. It's a pleasure to come on and talk about this. I used to be, still really am a shy person for the first 30 years of my life, and then when I noticed other people around me um, didn't know anything, and I just started speaking my mind. I started doing so, and I have all these, thoughts and information, and I like reading these nerdy things and weird things, and so I'm very grateful that I think there's, some wisdom in what I'm talking about. I hope there's a little bit of wisdom. I'm very grateful that you guys at Catholic Family Podcast and the Traditionalists have given me a platform to come on and talk about this. So, Mr. Davis and William, thank you very, very much for having me.
Absolutely, and yeah, we'll close out here with just the standard. Make sure to like, subscribe, and we don't ask for money here. We're doing this for free, but we very much appreciate and all the interaction we get from everybody. And any comments we get afterwards, it's just been great. And even if we don't, I think there's a great value here. Even if we don't, we have found this ourselves. Even if we don't get a big audience from a show, we still, the very act of talking these things through, I think there's merit in that. And I think we've learned a lot. And if anybody takes away anything tonight and is emboldened to kind of prepare for the future and to be prepared to stand bravely against it, then I think we've won the battle for tonight. So once again, thank you very much, Dr. Dan and William, and God bless. We're hoping to put on a show next week, tentatively, about Hitler's Pope, Pope Pius XII, and do a little bit of debunking of that particular historical myth. But until next week, God bless. And